A couple weeks ago, I did what I consider the best DC Comics stories that they've done. Really, since 2018, we kind of talked about DC Rebirth, but everything with that on the trade dress was excluded. And I talked about what I thought were the best DC comics. We're going to do a Marvel list since 2018. We're going to throw out House of X Powers of 10 because we've talked enough about that kind of stuff. We're getting to the end of the Krakoan era. And it's just not worth considering it anymore. Everyone knows that's really good. But what I think are the best Marvel comic books published since 2018. It was a lot of fun putting this list together. It was difficult. I did note when I did the DC video that most of their stuff wasn't in continuity. I thought that was a problem. With Marvel, a lot of the stuff that I did think was high quality and worth noting and in consideration for the best of list since 2018, a lot of it actually is in continuity, and I do think that's a good thing for Marvel Comics. It's good to have your best, most complete stories that feel like they're impactful actually happening in continuity, so they will affect the character and be remembered. You know, that's where you want your best stuff happening. Unfortunately, the big problem for Marvel is not many good things have happened really since 2021-ish. There are a couple of series that certainly went past that, finishing up and stuff like that. I know Strange Academy, I think finals went into 2023. I believe Maestro, World War M might have gone into the beginning part of 2023. But for the most part, a lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about here happened like 6-7 years ago, and they haven't had a lot of awesome stories since then. Things that were in consideration but did not quite make the top 5. And this first one is interesting because if this was actually a Marvel Comics book, it would be number 1. But it's not a Marvel comic book. It's actually published by a book company. It certainly has Marvel characters in it. Fantastic Four, Full Circle from Alex Ross. It's a graphic novel. Fucking amazing. Stellar story, stellar book. But it's not a Marvel Comics book, but it does have Marvel characters, so I thought I would mention that one. The best story with Marvel characters of the last, 6-7 years. Unfortunately, Marvel Comics didn't even publish the damn thing. Other books that were in consideration, other stories that I really, really liked, the Nick Spencer Amazing Spider-Man run, a little bit of a cock tease, but for the most part, very, very good. Hellions from Zeb Wells, Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run, also his Marvel 2-in-1 and Invader series, I thought were all very good. So Chip Zdarsky had some really strong work at Marvel Comics, but it's been quite a few years since we've had anything like that. Although Avengers Twilight is admittedly good as well. Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk. If it didn't go so screwy after issue, I would say 23, but certainly it's 25 where they went off into space and it just went completely downhill from there. Probably makes the list. Donny Cates' Thanos wins, I believe it's called. Very, very good one. And then finally, Savage Sword of Conan probably should be on the list. Jerry Duggan writing, Ron Garney on art. Love Ron Garney's art there. But it's technically not even a Marvel character. It's Conan. It's a licensed book. But it's very, very good and certainly needed to be in consideration. Now, getting into the top 5 Marvel stories since 2018, according to me, I start out with at number 5, Strange Academy, released in 2020, or at least started in 2020. Scotty Young writing, Humberto Ramos on art. It starts out, I think, with an 18-issue run, and then we get another mini-series afterward called Strange Academy Finals. And it's a fantastic series. And the thing about this is everybody, whether it be DC Comics, everybody that's got, products they would like to market at kids is tried the Harry Potter thing. We've gotten Gotham Academy, we've got Teen Titans Academy, we've gotten other academies at Marvel Comics, and they never really figured out how to do it. But this is how to do it. Strange Academy, Scotty Young really gets into the characters, introducing a whole swath of new, younger heroes to the Marvel Comics universe through the lens of having a school that's there to train them up, the Strange Academy itself. Not a whole lot of Doctor Strange in there. It's mostly Brother Voodoo is actually in charge of the school. And you get really well fleshed out characters that seem like they're age appropriate to them. And it's actually something that I got to enjoy with my kids. I read this one with my 8-year-old son. He was a little bit younger when it started out. And we thoroughly enjoyed it. And the Humberto Ramos art on it is absolutely fantastic. It's really fun from start to finish. The big highlight being Doyle Dormammu, the son of Dormammu himself, who wants to be a good guy but has some evil leanings. And we're constantly reminded through the series that his future is going to be very, very dark, that he likely does not have that hero's journey in him. But he gets to think, am I going to take destiny into my own hands? And we even had a heel turn by Miss Goody Two-Shoes in the story. She ends up turning on the Academy and all that kind of stuff. And it's a really, really good book with some really good stories in there. that you can actually enjoy with your kids. I think Strange Academy is absolutely brilliant. I think it sucks that they're watering it down. I don't want Strange Academy without Scotty Young or Humberto Ramos at this point. That is a fantastic series. If you never read that one, you're going to love that series. At number 4, I've got Killmonger, released in 2018. Brian Edward Hill writing, Juan Ferreira on art. And I personally love this series. This is basically an origin story for a villain. And typically, I like villains. I don't mind villain stories. But I don't normally fully invest in villain origin stories or really even villain spotlights and stuff like that. I prefer heroes, but the Killmonger series is really, really cool. He was coming off the big time success that was the Black Panther movie. You can see this version of Killmonger is certainly more associated with the movie than it is actually with Killmonger from the comic books. The guy that throws Black Panther over the waterfall, all that kind of stuff. But it's great. It's got a lot of intrigue. He's forced into joining up with like a heist team. One of them's got some superpowers and all that stuff. He gets turned on 2 or 3 times, and he's always imagining, becoming a prince of Wakanda, his birthright as he sees it. And at one point he's even believing that maybe he finally found his princess, the woman that's going to go and take Wakanda with him, by birth and all that kind of stuff. It does not turn out well for her because she ends up turning on him, but the art itself really sells the book. Juan Ferreira is a fantastic artist. He's one of my favorite artists in all of comic books. And this is the series that really put it on the map. Like, there's so many awesome cinematic shots. You can tell that Brian Hill, while being a very good comic book writer, is also a screenwriter for television and movies. And you get so many wonderful scenes playing out when they're storming, the club and everything. And then you get the big final scene that's kind of like in a church and all that stuff. And there's some wonderful shots of Kingpin in there, who's the one kind of behind all of this stuff. If you haven't checked out Killmonger, I'm not typically into the villains. That one absolutely delivered. Coming in at number 3 is Old Man Hawkeye from 2018. Ethan Sachs writing, Marco Cicchetto primarily the artist throughout this one. And I know that Marvel Comics have probably beat the old man whatever trope into the ground. And I did think after reading this that Ethan Sachs was going to be somebody at Marvel Comics. It turned out he's probably more average than good. But this is a real big-time standout series. This is a series where I really discovered Marco Cicchetto as an artist and realized how wonderful he was. And definitely big kudos to Dylan from The Real Comic Book Gamer. He's the one, he's like, man, if you've not been reading Old Man Hawkeye, you got to go check it out. And Ethan Sachs is able to do something in here that I haven't seen anyone do in comic books. He made Kate Bishop pretty bearable. Not only bearable, she's actually very useful and a cool character within the series. It is the old man trope where it's an apocalyptic future and bad things have happened. Normally, we're seeing it from the Logan perspective, how he was turned and he killed all the X-Men, thinking that they were the bad guys and all this stuff. Old Man Hawkeye is about an older Clint Barton, as you would expect, but he's actually losing his vision. He's got glaucoma. He's starting to go blind a little bit, and his awesome ability at archery is really not going to be able to help him anymore, and he's kind of brought back into the fight, realizing what happened to Black Widow and the other Avengers and how they all kind of fell, and realizes this is going to be my one last chance to get revenge and actually go out there on a high note and take down Bullseye, and I think Juggernaut's in there. There's a lot of great characters in Old Man Hawkeye. If you haven't checked that one out and you're a big Marco Cicchetto fan, I definitely highly encourage everyone to seek out those trades. There's 2 volumes of it. They did come back with an Old Man Quill, like Old Man Star-Lord from Ethan Sachs, and that was kind of the first time I realized, first off, the Old Man thing probably played out unless it's an exceptional story like Old Man Hawkeye, but maybe Ethan Sachs isn't going to be like that next generation Marvel writer that I thought he was. Now I think he mostly just does Star Wars at that point. But for a moment, for a year, a calendar year, because I think it came out in January 2018 and ended in December of 2018, Old Man Hawkeye is absolutely brilliant. Not a lot of people were talking about this series. I don't think it was highly recommended across the board. Not a lot of acclaim there for some reason. But if you want a really cool Clint Barton story, and if you want to see how Kate Bishop Hawkeye, the fake Hawkeye or whatever, can be actually utilized to a very high level and actually a cool character within Marvel Comics, that is the one for you. It's the one time I've thought Kate Bishop was a cool fucking character. That is a great story. Coming in at number 2, Venom, starting in 2018, Donny Cates writing, Ryan Stegman on art. I assumed this one would come in at number 1. I thought Donny Cates' Venom series following up kind of on Thanos was a revelation. Really got into the heart of Venom, built up that character, and built up a ton of Venom lore and the symbiote lore and the symbiote homeworld and symbiote gods and all that kind of stuff. The thing that really keeps it out of the #1 ranking, well, it's a couple things actually. Ryan Stegman starts out primarily as the artist on Venom, but once we get to Absolute Carnage, he comes back sporadically, but mostly it's like Ivan Coelho, Juan Gideon, some other artists like that. I think we even got Mark Bagley in there. Didn't really fit the series that Donny Cates was writing. So there wasn't a lot of stability when it came to the art. Although the Ryan Stegman Venom art is admittedly fantastic. But I did think Absolute Carnage, while being good, it was enjoyable, especially that first couple issues, really came out the gate strong. And it's not technically Venom, but it is the first event coming out of Donny Cates' Venom. Shouldn't have been an event. It should have been a Venom story arc because nothing actually gets resolved by the end. You just learn that Null is coming to Earth to kind of attack everybody, and it kind of sets up King in Black, which is the big final event that Donny Cates does at the end, which is admittedly also very good. So if they had made Absolute Carnage just a story beat within Venom, it certainly would have gone a long way to making me like the series more, because I was pissed off after Absolute Carnage. I was like, this is not an event. This is just setting up the next event, which is something that Marvel Comics does. So I do hold that against it. But Venom is absolutely a badass series. If you never checked it out, I'm very surprised that it was definitely the best Marvel series there for, I don't know, a couple years. Probably overtaken by Daredevil at some point, or maybe even Immortal Hulk, because that was a good run there for a while. But this is the book that really put Donny Cates on the map, cemented him as a superstar, if even for a brief period of time where he had sales basically on anything that he wrote. He did Guardians of the Galaxy book that wasn't very good, but certainly everyone liked his Hulk. I did personally like that one. People really liked his Thor. I thought that one was pretty good there for a while. But this is the book that really made Donny Cates a star, and Ryan Stegman is absolutely awesome. And King in Black is admittedly a lot of fun. Very, very good series there, but it's not good enough for #1. It's got a couple of warts on it, and I do think the #1 series on my list here doesn't have any warts on it. The Maestro Trilogy, starting in 2020 from Peter David writing, Herman Peralta on art. Unfortunately, Maestro, I don't believe is in continuity, or maybe it is in continuity because it is taking off of Future Imperfect, you know, the first introduction of Maestro, this weird version of Hulk that's kind of outlasted everybody. He's got weird gray hair with a beard, and he's fully Hulk now. There's really no Banner left to him in a future where he wants to be left alone, and this is basically how Hulk becomes the king and all that kind of stuff. And it starts out with Maestro. It continues on with Maestro War and Pax. And then I believe it finishes up with Maestro World War M. And it really just gets better and better. And it was crazy how Peter David was literally riding circles around the entire Marvel Comics bullpen of writers. They could not keep up with this guy. Every time they did a Maestro series, he knocked it out of the park. It's 15 issues. Absolutely fantastic stuff. At least when I first was introduced to Maestro, I was like, yeah, that's a cool story. Don't know that I ever want to see the character again. Don't know that he's impactful or important, but I do think that's a really cool concept. But I never realized I wanted more Maestro until it came out. I was like, yeah, you know, there's not a lot of stuff going on right now. Let me check this out. And I've been blown away ever since. And I do think Dale Keown illustrated a little bit of the first miniseries as well. He was doing covers and stuff. So we got Peter David and Dale Keown back together again. So that was really cool. And the way that it played out, much like Old Man Hawkeye, so you had that dystopian future and weird versions of all the characters and what happened to them and laying dormant. And all of a sudden you've got, I don't know, like the Maestro version of Abomination, which was definitely a highlight. We've got Doom in there. We got all kinds of characters running the gambit throughout the entire series. And it really is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful trilogy. It's unfortunate they weren't giving Peter David in continuity work because he was clearly the best writer that they had. He was even doing the symbiote Spider-Man stuff, like in continuity stories, but 30 years earlier. And those were fantastic too. The only one that wasn't good was symbiote Spider-Man King in Black, I believe. Whichever one tied into a Donny Cates Venom run didn't need to happen. Peter David was clearly at the time the best writer that Marvel Comics had, but they kept doing him on miniseries. And right now he's got Symbiote Spider-Man 2099. I'm not the world's biggest 2099 fan, but he's definitely sold me on that one. There was a bit of a hiccup on the second issue, but the third issue is quite badass. And I do wish Peter David the best of luck, you know, with his health and all that stuff and his recovery. And I do wish Marvel Comics would identify the best talent that they have and give them the most important books. Because that's not happening right now, or Peter David probably would have been on Spider-Man or something like that. But that is my list, the best Marvel Comics since 2018. Strange Academy, Killmonger, Old Man Hawkeye, Venom, and Maestro. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of current stuff. And I do think that's a problem for Marvel Comics. They need more good stories happening now because it's been a while since we've had a good run. Like the last run that you really could consider for a list like this was Moon Knight. And while it's good, it's not as good as Invaders. It's not as good as Immortal Hulk or Amazing Spider-Man from Nick Spencer and stuff like that. It's just kind of average. But in today's climate, it almost feels like, that Venom run from Donny Cates, because it's so much better than everything else going on basically at the time. So weird stuff going on with the Marvel, but there are some great stories out there. If you haven't checked those out, I definitely highly suggest it. Marvel's kind of a barren wasteland, but there are a few diamonds in the rough to discover along the way. If you enjoy this and you like comic book reviews and staying up on top of everything happening at Marvel and DC, we got tons of podcasts coming out every single day of the week, exclusive content you will never find here on YouTube. If you support us there, we want to give you awesome podcasts in return, including the Hot or Not Show with Jim, which I definitely think you will love. There's a link in the video description.